So I recently had an epic Patreon fail. A couple weeks ago, I decided to launch a Patreon for my own music. I don't know why I got this in my head. I had seen some other people do it well, and some people had recommended. And I was also coming off of a reasonably successful album launch a couple months earlier, and people were responding to me and the music. And I thought now would be a good time to do a Patreon, maybe, and maybe and people think to do it because it's like it's giving your fans an opportunity to support you, and you don't know who's out there. You don't know, you might have a fan who's a millionaire and wants to give you $100 a month. You don't know. And so opening yourself up to that potential is what Patreon provides. But for me, it was pretty catastrophic. Let me explain. I launched it on a Wednesday. I had some cool social media graphics. I had some cool perks, like things like a monthly podcast and a monthly album of B-sides and some updates and some video stuff. I thought it was pretty good. And all the tiers had access to those perks. So I launched it on a Wednesday, and I had some cool social media graphics, and I had it on all of my platforms, on Facebook and on Twitter and Instagram and on YouTube and all of these things. And guess how many patrons I got on the first day? 0. Now, second day, also 0. Third day, 0 as well. And by the weekend, finally 0 still, always 0. And then by the time it come around and I kind of called the whole thing off, on the following Wednesday, it was still 0. So I kind of been thinking, what went wrong? And I'm trying to figure out, maybe it was the time of year. I launched it in January because for me, it was a great time of year for accounting purposes to launch in January. I had the wrong demographic. Maybe my fans just aren't Patreon people. I mean, maybe Patreon people are much younger. Maybe Patreon people are much older, in their 40s and 50s, have more disposable income. I don't really know. Maybe my demographic is just not interested in that. Maybe because I was coming off of a record, people were kind of exhausted from hearing from me, and I had been asking them for too much by selling vinyl and tapes and CDs and digital and singles and EPs and everything. And maybe they just thought, okay, enough. So I've given this guy enough money. So maybe if I launch it outside of an album cycle, that would have worked better. I'm not exactly sure. I thought the perks were good, like the fact that I had done this like album commentary podcast. I thought that was good. And some of the B-sides were actually quite good quality, and I started to amass them, and I was excited to release them. I thought the branding was right. The Patreon had its own kind of look and feel, using a unique photo and some graphics and stuff. And I thought the timing was right because it was right after an album release, and people were supportive of the album release. So I thought timing is good. There's 3 things I'm going to give you. So I'm a total failure. So I'm going to give you some advice, and I don't know if they're going to be applicable to you. I don't even know if they would have been applicable to me, but I'm going to give you 3 pieces of advice because I am now a Patreon expert, because it was a total disaster. And so if you want to not be like me and to avoid your own Patreon disaster, then just keep these 3 things in mind, and we'll see how you fare out. Number 1 is, don't copy other people's Patreon strategies. I know that's kind of a mouthful, and I'm sure there's a cooler way of saying it. But when you look at other artists who are doing Patreon and you think, hey, I should be getting that kind of money too, I'm just as good as them, they're probably doing something different, or they have a different audience, or they have a different type of audience, or maybe they've been doing it for longer and they've amassed those numbers over a certain amount of time. Whatever it is, don't look at other patrons and copy them. What you need to do is you need to do your own thing, something that you're passionate about, something that your fans can recognize as unique to you. And for me, that's actually just not doing a Patreon at all. Patreon, I got the word from my audience that we don't want to support you on Patreon. So the message was loud and clear. All 0 of you told me that. And so now I know I'm going to listen to my audience. I'm going to do something that's authentic to me, and more on that in a second. The other thing is, don't get yourself into something that's not sustainable. And I thought that I had gotten into a way I could do a podcast once a month for my patrons, and I thought I could scrounge enough B-sides to come up with some B-sides for people. And I thought maybe that I could, have something new to tell them and to share with them, and let them in on something that I was working on. I felt like I had developed something that was sustainable. In my mind, my patrons were going to get something once a week, and I had to come up with 1 video a month, 1 podcast a month, 1 B-side a month, and 1 update a month. And that was going to be sustainable for me. So whatever it is that you come up with, you want to make sure that it doesn't take all of your time, because what if you launch and you only get like $20 a month, or you only get $100 or $50 or $5? You want to be able to maintain that Patreon and have it keep going. But at the same time, you don't want it to be overwhelming and realizing, why am I putting together all this work and doing all of this bonus content for only 3 people, or for only $15, or for only $20 or $40? So you want to make sure that you ask yourself, hey, can I make this sustainable even if I only have 2 patrons or 3 patrons or $20 or $15? And see, what's interesting about that is, I think, and again, I'm not a Patreon expert, as you know, but I think that people don't necessarily sign up for a Patreon for the exclusives. That's kind of just a little bit of a bonus. I think for the most part, they're signing up for a Patreon because they want to show you that they support you and they love you, and that they're just thankful for the regular content that you create. And so now, as I say that, I start to tear up a little bit because nobody said that to me, but I'm over it. I'm totally over it. No big deal. But it hurts. So what you want to just make sure that what you do is sustainable, and remember that they're maybe just signing up to support you, and they aren't necessarily expecting all of this stuff in return. Because if you commit to all of these massive things you got to make monthly, and you're only getting paid $20 a month to do it, that's not a great scenario. And the final thing is, and this is completely anti-Patreon, is to maybe instead just be generous with your fans. You don't need to do a Patreon. That's what I'm going to do. So my takeaway is, I had some great exclusives that I was going to release just to my patrons, and now I'm just going to release them to the world. I'm going to release this podcast episode for free on Spotify. I'm going to release these B-sides for free. I'm going to have more regular content. And so instead of just trying to maybe, and this is what I'm preaching to myself here, instead of trying to milk like $5, $10, $20, $100 a month from a few diehard people, instead, I'm just going to give away as much as I can. I'm going to be transparent, and I'm going to be generous, and I'm going to be prolific as an artist, and just release as much as I can for free for everyone, for free, maybe on Spotify, or maybe it's like a $1 thing on Bandcamp, but it's open access to everyone. And then hopefully that comes back to me in some ways, with people buying my record on vinyl, or buying my merch, or supporting the record label, or whatever. I hope you found this helpful. I mean, I'm just being honest with you, and I'd love it if you subscribed and liked and commented. I'd love to hear about your experiences with Patreon. I would love to do a Patreon and to have more than 0 subscribers at some point. So if you have any advice for me, feel free to leave it in the comments. I would really want to know. But I just wanted to share this epic fail with you, and hopefully you can benefit from it.